The Admiral's Story, Part 1. The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base as Admiral Richard Hayes stepped out of his quarters. At 52, he carried himself with the quiet confidence that came from 3 decades of military service. His weathered hands bore the scars of countless operations, and his steel-gray eyes had seen more combat than most men twice his age. Today felt different, though he couldn't quite place why. Hayes had earned his reputation the hard way. Starting as a young sailor fresh out of basic training, he had climbed through the ranks by proving himself in every theater of operation the Navy had thrown at him. Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and countless classified missions had shaped him into the man he was today. His chest bore ribbons that told stories most civilians could never imagine, but it was his hands-on leadership style that truly set him apart. The base was buzzing with unusual activity. Intelligence reports had been flooding in for weeks about increased pirate activity in the region. These weren't the romanticized pirates of Hollywood movies, but ruthless criminals armed with military-grade weapons who had been terrorizing shipping lanes and taking hostages for ransom. The situation had escalated beyond what local forces could handle. Admiral Hayes made his way to the briefing room where his team was already assembled. Commander Sarah Mitchell, his second-in-command, stood at attention alongside Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez and several other key officers. The tension in the room was palpable as satellite images and intelligence reports covered every available surface. The briefing painted a grim picture. A cargo vessel carrying humanitarian supplies had sent out a distress signal 3 hours ago, before going silent. The ship, MV Horizon, was carrying medical supplies and food aid destined for refugee camps. Intelligence suggested it had been intercepted by a well-organized pirate group that had been growing bolder with each successful hijacking. What made this situation particularly dangerous was the profile of the pirate leader known only as the Shark, real name unknown. This individual had military training and had been recruiting former soldiers from various conflict zones. His crew wasn't just a ragtag group of desperate criminals. They were disciplined fighters with access to heavy weapons and sophisticated tactics. Hayes studied the reconnaissance photos spread across the table. The pirates had established a floating base using several captured vessels lashed together, creating a makeshift fortress in international waters. Thermal imaging showed at least 30 armed individuals, with heavy machine gun emplacements and what appeared to be shoulder-fired missiles. Taking back the Horizon wouldn't be a simple rescue operation. The Admiral's mind raced through potential scenarios. A traditional assault would likely result in the execution of hostages before his team could reach them. Airstrikes were out of the question with innocent civilians aboard. This required precision, speed, and the element of surprise. Most importantly, it required someone willing to take calculated risks. Commander Mitchell briefed the assembled officers on the latest intelligence. The pirates had moved the Horizon to their floating base, where they were likely transferring cargo and preparing to move the crew to a more secure location. Time was running short. Every hour that passed increased the danger to the 23 crew members and 6 aid workers aboard the vessel. Hayes had faced similar situations before, but something about this mission felt personal. The cargo ship's captain, David Chen, was a family friend whose daughter had served under Hayes years earlier. The young woman had been killed in action, and Hayes had personally delivered the news to her father. The thought of Chen facing torture or execution at the hands of these criminals stirred something deep in the Admiral's chest. The planning session stretched into the afternoon as various assault options were discussed and discarded. Traditional naval tactics seemed inadequate for the unique challenge posed by the floating fortress. The pirates had chosen their position well, with clear lines of sight in all directions and multiple escape routes if things went wrong. As the sun began to set, Hayes made a decision that would surprise everyone in the room. Instead of authorizing the large-scale operation his staff had been planning, he proposed something far more audacious. A small team insertion under cover of darkness using stealth rather than overwhelming force. The goal would be to neutralize key targets simultaneously, creating confusion and preventing organized resistance. The room fell silent as Hayes outlined his plan. It was risky, perhaps even reckless by conventional standards, but the Admiral had built his career on understanding that sometimes the most direct approach was also the most unexpected. The pirates would be watching for a large naval response, not a precision strike by a handful of specialists. Commander Mitchell voiced the concern everyone was thinking. "Sir, with respect, intelligence suggests heavy fortification of their position. A small team would be walking into a potential death trap." Her words carried the weight of genuine concern for both the mission and her commanding officer. Hayes nodded, acknowledging the risk. But he had seen too many hostages die during prolonged standoffs. Too many good sailors lost to overly complicated plans. Sometimes leadership meant being willing to put yourself in the greatest danger to minimize risk to others. The Admiral had never asked his people to do anything he wouldn't do himself. The final details of the mission began taking shape as evening approached. Hayes would personally lead a team of 6 specialists, approaching the pirate base in fast boats under cover of darkness. The element of surprise would be crucial, as would perfect timing and execution. There would be no room for error, no backup plan if things went wrong. As the briefing concluded and his officers filed out to begin preparations, Hayes remained alone with the intelligence photos. He studied each image carefully, memorizing the layout of the floating fortress and the positions of enemy sentries. Somewhere in that maze of stolen vessels, 29 innocent people were waiting for rescue, probably certain that help would never come. The Admiral walked to the window overlooking the harbor where his strike team's boats were being prepared. The weapons they would carry were carefully selected for the mission, including the .50 caliber rifle that had earned its reputation in countless operations. Hayes had personally requested that particular weapon, knowing that precision firepower might be the key to preventing a massacre. Tonight would test everything he had learned in 3 decades of service. Success would mean 29 people going home to their families. Failure would likely mean their deaths along with his own. As Admiral Hayes prepared for what could be his final mission, he felt the familiar calm that came before stepping into combat. Fear was natural, but it would not cloud his judgment when lives hung in the balance. The Admiral's Story. Part 2. The operations room hummed with quiet intensity as Admiral Hayes and his hand-picked team made final preparations. Each member of the 6-man unit had been chosen for specific skills that would be crucial in the hours ahead. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, a former Navy SEAL with over 15 years of combat experience, would handle close-quarters combat. Petty Officer First Class David Kim brought explosives expertise that might be needed to breach fortified positions. The intelligence picture had become clearer as satellite surveillance continued throughout the day. The pirate stronghold consisted of 4 vessels lashed together, with the captured cargo ship Horizon positioned at the center. Thermal imaging revealed the locations of sentries and confirmed that hostages were being held in the ship's main cargo hold, making any rescue attempt extremely delicate. Hayes studied the detailed reconnaissance photos one final time. The .50 caliber Barrett rifle lay disassembled on the table beside him, its components gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. This weapon had been his companion through multiple deployments, and he knew its capabilities better than most snipers half his age. Tonight, precision would matter more than raw firepower. The mission timeline was tight. Intelligence suggested the pirates planned to move the hostages to a different location within 12 hours, probably to make ransom demands. Once the captives were dispersed or moved inland, rescue would become nearly impossible. The window of opportunity was closing rapidly, and Hayes knew they might not get another chance. Commander Mitchell approached with the latest weather report. Conditions were marginal but workable, with light winds and moderate swells that would provide some cover for their approach. The moon would be new, offering maximum darkness but also making navigation more challenging. Every factor seemed to cut both ways, requiring perfect execution to overcome the odds. The Admiral's assault plan was deceptively simple. 2 fast boats would approach from different directions, with his team creating a diversion while he positioned himself for overwatch with the .50 caliber rifle. The key was simultaneous neutralization of the pirate sentries before they could alert the main force or harm the hostages. Timing would be measured in seconds, not minutes. Hayes had personally trained with each team member, knowing their capabilities and limitations. Thompson's expertise in silent takedowns would be crucial for eliminating guards without raising alarms. Kim's knowledge of ship layouts would help navigate the maze of interconnected vessels quickly. Every man understood that failure would likely mean death for themselves and the hostages. The weapons check proceeded with military precision. Each team member carried suppressed weapons for silent elimination of threats, along with flashbang grenades and breaching charges. Hayes shouldered the Barrett rifle, feeling its familiar weight and checking the scope alignment one final time. At ranges up to 800 meters, this weapon could punch through light armor and deliver instant incapacitation. As 0 hour approached, the team gathered for final briefing updates. Intelligence had identified the probable location of the pirate leader known as the Shark. This individual was reportedly positioned on the highest deck of the floating fortress, directing operations and maintaining communications with unknown parties on shore. Eliminating him early would disrupt command and control of the entire operation. The boats departed the naval base under cover of complete darkness, their engines muffled and running lights extinguished. Hayes felt the familiar pre-combat calm settling over him as they moved through the black water toward their objective. Years of training and experience had taught him to channel nervous energy into heightened awareness and steady hands. Radio silence was maintained as they approached the target area, with communication limited to hand signals and predetermined codes. The thermal imaging equipment showed the pirate sentries maintaining their positions, apparently unaware that death was approaching through the darkness. Hayes counted at least 12 guards visible on the outer perimeter, with more certainly hidden inside the vessel complex. The Admiral's boat separated from the main assault team at the predetermined coordinates, moving to establish a firing position with clear lines of sight to the target area. The Barrett rifle was assembled and positioned with practiced efficiency, its bipod legs locked and scope aligned. Hayes had performed this routine hundreds of times, but tonight felt different. Tonight, 29 lives depended on his marksmanship. Through the rifle scope, the floating fortress came into sharp detail. Hayes could see individual pirates moving between positions, their weapons clearly visible in the enhanced night vision. The cargo ship Horizon sat in the center like a prize, its superstructure modified with additional armor plating and weapon mounts. These weren't amateur criminals, they were organized and well-equipped fighters. The assault team moved into position, preparing for their coordinated attack on the fortress perimeter. Hayes tracked potential targets through his scope, identifying the sentries who posed the greatest threat to his approaching teammates. 6 targets had been identified as priority eliminates, each positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire that could devastate the assault team if not neutralized immediately. Minutes felt like hours as the final preparations were completed. Hayes controlled his breathing, settling into the shooter's mindset that had served him through countless engagements. The rifle felt like an extension of his body, its weight balanced perfectly against the boat's gentle motion. Weather conditions were stable, with minimal wind drift to compensate for. The radio crackled with the coded signal indicating the assault team was in final position. Hayes made micro-adjustments to his scope, ranging each target and calculating the precise holdovers needed for multiple quick shots. The .50 caliber rounds in his magazine were match-grade ammunition, capable of devastating accuracy at the ranges involved. The floating fortress showed no signs of increased alertness, with the pirate sentries maintaining their routine patrol patterns. Hayes tracked the movements carefully, timing their positions to maximize the effectiveness of his initial shots. The element of surprise would only last seconds, making those first few rounds absolutely critical to mission success. Through his earpiece, Hayes heard the final countdown begin. Thompson's voice was calm and professional as he reported the assault team's readiness. Kim confirmed the explosive charges were armed and ready for deployment. Every piece of the complex puzzle was in place, waiting for the Admiral's signal to begin what could be the most important firefight of their careers. Hayes settled his crosshairs on the first target, a pirate armed with an assault rifle positioned on the highest observation post. This individual had the best view of the surrounding water and would be the first to spot the approaching assault team. Eliminating him immediately was crucial to maintaining surprise for the precious seconds needed to neutralize the remaining sentries. The Admiral's finger found the trigger as he prepared to engage multiple targets in rapid succession. Years of training had taught him to shoot fast and accurately under pressure, but tonight would test every skill he had developed. 6 targets needed to be eliminated in seconds before they could return fire or alert the main pirate force. There would be no second chances if he missed. The Admiral's story. Part 3. The moment arrived with crystalline clarity. Admiral Hayes felt time slow as his finger applied steady pressure to the Barrett's trigger. The first shot erupted from the rifle with controlled violence, the .50 caliber round crossing 800 meters of dark water in less than a second. Through his scope, Hayes watched the pirate sentry on the observation post crumple instantly, the devastating impact eliminating the threat before the man could comprehend what had happened. Without hesitation, Hayes worked the bolt and acquired his second target. The pirate on the port side of the floating fortress was turning toward the sound of the first shot when the second .50 caliber round found its mark. The massive bullet punched through the target's center mass with terminal effectiveness, dropping him behind the steel barrier where he had been positioned. The third target was already moving, alerted by the suppressed but still audible crack of the rifle shots. Hayes led the running figure slightly, compensating for movement and distance before sending another round downrange. The pirate's sprint ended abruptly as the bullet struck home, his weapon clattering across the deck as he fell motionless. Target number 4 presented a more challenging shot, partially concealed behind structural elements of the modified cargo container that served as a guard post. Hayes could see enough of the man's torso to place an effective shot, and the .50 caliber round proved devastating even through the thin metal sheeting. The pirate's return fire died before it could begin. By now, the remaining sentries were beginning to react to the sudden elimination of their companions. The fifth target was raising his assault rifle toward the assault team's position when Hayes's bullet arrived first. The precision marksmanship that had earned the Admiral his reputation served him perfectly, delivering instant incapacitation at extended range under difficult conditions. The sixth and final priority target was the most dangerous, positioned behind a heavy machine gun emplacement that could have devastated the approaching assault team. Hayes adjusted his aim slightly to account for the target's body armor, placing his shot with surgical precision. The .50 caliber round proved its worth against personal protection, neutralizing the threat before the machine gun could be brought into action. 6 targets down in less than 10 seconds. The Admiral's legendary marksmanship had created the opening his team needed to breach the floating fortress without walking into a coordinated ambush. Hayes immediately transitioned to Overwatch mode, scanning for additional threats while his assault team exploited the chaos he had created. Chief Thompson's voice crackled through the radio as the assault team moved in. Overwatch, we're going in. Multiple targets neutralized on approach. No return fire detected. The professional calm in Thompson's voice indicated the plan was working, but Hayes knew the most dangerous part was just beginning. Through his scope, Hayes watched his team members move like shadows across the water, their black-painted boats nearly invisible against the dark sea. The element of surprise was holding, but it wouldn't last long once they began boarding the interconnected vessels. The Admiral maintained his firing position, ready to provide precision support if his team encountered unexpected resistance. The first boat reached the floating fortress without detection, with Thompson and Kim leading the silent boarding operation. Hayes tracked their movement through thermal imaging, watching as they eliminated additional sentries who had not been visible from his Overwatch position. Each takedown was executed with professional efficiency, maintaining the element of surprise. The second assault team boat approached from the opposite side, preparing to breach the cargo hold where intelligence indicated the hostages were being held. This was the most critical phase of the operation, as any alarm could result in the immediate execution of the 29 captured crew members and aid workers. Hayes kept his rifle trained on potential threat areas, ready to engage any pirate who might threaten the hostages. Suddenly, Hayes spotted movement in his peripheral vision. A pirate who had been concealed below deck was emerging with what appeared to be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. This individual hadn't been identified in the initial reconnaissance, but represented a deadly threat to the assault boats. Hayes swung his rifle toward the new target, calculating range and wind drift in a split second. The .50 caliber round took the RPG-armed pirate center mass just as he was shouldering the launcher. The devastating impact sent both man and weapon tumbling into the dark water, eliminating a threat that could have sunk one of the assault boats and killed the entire rescue team. Hayes immediately resumed scanning for additional hidden threats. Thompson's team had reached the main deck of the cargo vessel and was beginning their systematic clearance of the superstructure. Intelligence suggested the pirate leader was positioned somewhere in the ship's bridge area, likely coordinating with forces on shore. Capturing or eliminating this individual would be crucial to preventing reinforcements from arriving. The Admiral watched through his scope as explosive charges detonated simultaneously on multiple levels of the floating fortress. Kim's expertise was evident in the precisely placed breaching charges that opened access routes while avoiding damage to areas where hostages might be held. The coordinated explosions created confusion among the remaining pirates while providing the assault team with multiple entry points. Hayes spotted muzzle flashes from inside the ship's superstructure as his team encountered armed resistance. The distinctive sound of suppressed weapons fire echoed across the water, indicating close-quarters combat was underway. Through his scope, the Admiral could see pirates attempting to establish defensive positions, but his team's training and equipment gave them a decisive advantage. A radio transmission from Kim indicated they had located the hostages in the cargo hold, but the area was heavily guarded. Hayes adjusted his position to provide overwatch for the hostage rescue operation, knowing that this phase would be the most dangerous. Any mistake could result in a massacre of the innocent civilians they had come to save. The thermal imaging showed a complex tactical situation developing inside the ship. Hayes could see his team members moving through the corridors, while pirates attempted to organize a defense. The precise elimination of the 6 priority targets had prevented any coordinated resistance, but individual fighters were still dangerous in close-quarters combat. Thompson's voice came through the radio with an urgent update. Overwatch, we've located the package, but we're taking fire from multiple positions. Request immediate support on the bridge level. Hayes immediately shifted his aim toward the ship's bridge, where muzzle flashes indicated enemy activity. Through his scope, Hayes could see a figure moving between windows on the bridge level, apparently trying to coordinate the defense while staying out of sight. This was likely the Shark, the pirate leader whose capture would effectively end the criminal organization's operations in the region. Hayes tracked the movement carefully, waiting for a clear shot. The opportunity came when the figure moved to a communication station, probably attempting to call for reinforcements. Hayes had a clear view through one of the bridge windows, with the target momentarily stationary. The Admiral's shot was perfect, the .50 caliber round punching through the reinforced glass and eliminating the pirate leader instantly. With their leader down and their outer defenses eliminated, the remaining pirates began to lose cohesion. Hayes watched through his scope as several individuals attempted to flee in small boats, but his team was already in position to prevent escape. The careful planning and precise execution were paying off as the floating fortress came under complete control. The radio crackled with Thompson's voice reporting successful breach of the cargo hold. Overwatch, we have the hostages. 29 souls accounted for, all alive. Medical attention needed for several, but no critical injuries detected. Hayes felt a surge of relief as the primary mission objective was achieved, but the operation wasn't over yet. Intelligence indicated this pirate group had been working with onshore contacts who might attempt to interfere with the rescue. Hayes maintained his overwatch position, scanning the horizon for approaching vessels while his team secured the floating fortress and prepared the hostages for evacuation. The Admiral's Story, Part 4. The hostage evacuation began immediately as Admiral Hayes maintained his overwatch position. Through his scope, he could see Thompson's team moving the rescued civilians toward the extraction point with military precision. 29 people who had faced certain death just minutes earlier were now being guided to safety by his hand-picked specialists. Among them, Captain David Chen appeared shaken but unharmed, his gray hair disheveled from captivity but his eyes alert and determined. Hayes kept his rifle trained on potential threat areas as the evacuation proceeded. Intelligence had warned of possible reinforcements arriving by sea, and the Admiral's experience told him that criminal organizations rarely operated without backup plans. The thermal imaging equipment continued scanning the horizon for approaching vessels while his team worked to get the hostages off the floating fortress. Chief Thompson's voice came through the radio with a status update. Overwatch, first group of hostages secured in Boat 1, moving to extract remaining personnel from cargo hold. Estimate 10 minutes for complete evacuation. The professional calm in Thompson's voice indicated everything was proceeding according to plan. But Hayes knew that 10 minutes could feel like hours in a combat situation. The Admiral noticed movement on one of the lower decks that hadn't been cleared yet. A figure was moving between shipping containers, apparently trying to remain hidden from the assault team. Hayes tracked the individual through his scope, noting the distinctive clothing and equipment that marked him as another pirate who had avoided the initial sweep. This person was moving toward the hostage extraction point with obvious hostile intent. Without hesitation, Hayes engaged the target. The .50 caliber round eliminated the threat before the individual could interfere with the evacuation operation. Through his scope, the Admiral confirmed the target was down before resuming his scan for additional threats. The systematic elimination of every armed opponent was crucial to ensuring the hostages reached safety. Petty Officer Kim's voice crackled through the radio with concerning intelligence. Overwatch, we found communications equipment indicating contact with shore-based support. Multiple vessels may be en route to our position. This confirmed Hayes' suspicions about backup forces, adding urgency to the evacuation timeline. The Admiral adjusted his scanning pattern to focus on the most likely approach routes for enemy reinforcements. The floating fortress was positioned in international waters, but several coastal areas could serve as launching points for additional pirate vessels. Hayes' experience in similar operations told him they had perhaps 15 minutes before facing a much larger enemy force. Through his thermal imaging, Hayes spotted the first signs of approaching trouble. 3 fast boats were moving toward their position from the northeast, their heat signatures indicating high-speed engines and multiple occupants. The Admiral immediately radioed this intelligence to his team while calculating engagement, ranges, and firing solutions for the incoming threats. Thompson acknowledged the warning while continuing. To move hostages toward the extraction boats. Overwatch understood. We need 5 more minutes to complete evacuation. Can you delay the approaching hostiles? Hayes studied the tactical situation through his scope, noting that the enemy boats were still at extreme range but closing rapidly. The Admiral made a tactical decision that would define the next phase of the operation. Instead of waiting for the enemy boats to reach optimal firing range, he would engage them at maximum distance to disrupt their approach and buy precious time for the evacuation. The .50 caliber rifle was capable of effective fire at ranges that would surprise the approaching pirates. Hayes selected his first target, the lead boat that appeared to be carrying the most personnel. At nearly 1,200 meters, this would be an extremely challenging shot from a moving platform against a moving target. The Admiral compensated for boat motion, wind drift, and the target's speed before sending his first round downrange. The massive bullet struck the lead boat's engine compartment, causing a spectacular explosion that stopped the vessel instantly. Secondary explosions indicated the boat had been carrying additional fuel or ammunition, creating a pillar of fire that was visible for miles. The remaining 2 boats immediately changed course, apparently surprised by the long-range precision fire. Thompson's voice indicated the evacuation was proceeding rapidly. Overwatch, second group of hostages embarking now. Final group in 2 minutes. Hayes continued tracking the remaining enemy boats, which had spread out and were approaching from multiple directions. This tactical adjustment showed the pirates had some professional training and wouldn't be easily deterred. The Admiral engaged the second boat as it attempted to close within its own weapons range. The .50 caliber round punched through the vessel's hull below the waterline, causing immediate flooding that forced the crew to focus on survival rather than attack. Hayes watched through his scope as the boat began listing heavily, its occupants abandoning their weapons to deal with the emergency. The third boat had learned from the fate of its companions and was maintaining maximum distance while attempting to circle around to the extraction area. Hayes tracked this final threat carefully, noting that it carried what appeared to be a heavy machine gun that could devastate the evacuation boats if it reached effective range. The Admiral calculated a difficult shot against the maneuvering target. His patience was rewarded when the enemy boat stabilized momentarily to set up its own firing position. Hayes sent a .50 caliber round through the boat's steering mechanism, causing it to veer wildly out of control. Without accurate steering, the vessel posed no immediate threat to the evacuation operation, though its crew was still armed and dangerous. Thompson's final transmission indicated mission success. Overwatch, all hostages extracted successfully. 29 souls safe and accounted for. Assault team departing floating fortress in 60 seconds. Hayes felt the satisfaction that came with a perfectly executed rescue operation, but maintained his vigilance until his team was clear of the area. The Admiral watched through his scope as the assault boats departed the floating fortress with their precious cargo of rescued hostages. Captain Chen was visible in one of the boats, his experienced sailor's posture indicating he was already helping to organize the evacuation, despite his recent ordeal. The other hostages appeared to be in various states of shock but were clearly grateful to be alive. Hayes maintained overwatch until the extraction boats were well clear of any potential threat from the disabled enemy vessels. Only then did he begin disassembling the Barrett rifle for transport, his hands moving with the automatic precision that came from countless similar operations. The weapon had performed flawlessly, delivering precision fire when accuracy meant the difference between life and death. As the Admiral's boat began its return journey to the naval base, he reflected on the night's events. 6 targets eliminated in seconds with the .50 caliber rifle had prevented a potential massacre, while enabling the successful rescue of 29 innocent people. The floating fortress that had terrorized shipping lanes was now abandoned, its criminal crew either dead or fleeing in damaged boats. The rescued hostages were already receiving medical attention aboard the evacuation boats, with Navy corpsmen treating various injuries sustained during their captivity. Intelligence gathered from the floating fortress would help identify and eliminate other criminal organizations operating in the region. The pirate leader known as the Shark was dead, effectively ending his reign of terror. Hayes knew that news of the successful operation would spread quickly through both military and criminal networks. The precision and effectiveness of the rescue would serve as a deterrent to other pirate groups, considering similar operations. Sometimes the best way to prevent future crimes was to demonstrate the inevitable consequences of threatening innocent lives. As dawn approached, the naval base came into view with its promise of safety and debriefing sessions. Admiral Hayes had once again proven that experience, training, and precise marksmanship could overcome overwhelming odds when applied with tactical intelligence. The .50 caliber rifle secured in its case had delivered justice with mechanical precision, saving lives through superior firepower and accuracy. The mission was complete, but Hayes knew this was just one battle in the ongoing war against maritime piracy. There would be other criminals, other hostages, and other opportunities to apply the skills he had spent a lifetime developing. For now, though, 29 people would go home to their families because of what had happened in those crucial seconds when the Admiral took the .50 cal. The Admiral's Story, Part 5. The naval base's medical facility buzzed with activity as the rescued hostages received comprehensive care. Admiral Hayes stood in the observation area, watching through reinforced glass as doctors and nurses tended to the 29 individuals his team had pulled from certain death. Captain David Chen sat on one of the examination tables, his weathered hand steady despite the ordeal he had endured. The man's resilience reminded Hayes of his daughter, the young officer who had paid the ultimate price years earlier. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the base's chief medical officer, approached Hayes with preliminary reports on the hostages' conditions. "Admiral, physically they're in better shape than we expected. Some dehydration, minor injuries from rough handling, but nothing life-threatening. Psychologically, it'll take time to process what they've been through." Her professional assessment was tinged with relief that the rescue had been successful. Hayes nodded, his attention focused on the aid workers who had been aboard the cargo vessel. These civilians had volunteered to deliver humanitarian supplies to refugee camps, never expecting to become hostages themselves. Their courage in the face of terror impressed the Admiral, reminding him why operations like this morning's were so crucial to protecting innocent lives. The debriefing session convened in the base's secure conference room 2 hours after the hostages were safely ashore. Commander Mitchell had assembled a comprehensive intelligence package based on materials recovered from the floating fortress. The scope of the criminal organization was larger than anyone had initially suspected, with connections reaching across multiple countries and criminal networks. Chief Thompson presented his team's tactical assessment of the operation. "Sir, the precision elimination of those 6 targets was the key to everything that followed. Without that initial success, we would have faced organized resistance that could have resulted in massive casualties." The veteran SEAL's professional analysis carried weight with everyone in the room. Intelligence Officer Rodriguez spread reconnaissance photos across the conference table, showing the aftermath of the rescue operation. The floating fortress was now abandoned, its interconnected vessels beginning to drift apart without maintenance. Several smaller boats were visible in the area, apparently scavenging equipment from the defeated pirate base. Hayes studied the intelligence materials carefully, noting details that would be crucial for future operations. The pirates had been well equipped with military-grade weapons and communications equipment, suggesting support from sources with access to restricted materials. This wasn't a simple criminal enterprise, but part of a larger network that threatened regional stability. The rescued hostages provided valuable intelligence during their initial interviews. Captain Chen's decades of maritime experience allowed him to identify specific details about the pirates' operations, including their apparent familiarity with shipping schedules and cargo manifests. This inside knowledge suggested infiltration of legitimate shipping companies or port authorities. News of the successful rescue operation was already spreading through military and intelligence channels. Admiral Hayes received congratulatory messages from senior commanders around the world, recognizing both the tactical excellence of the mission and its strategic importance in combating maritime piracy. The precision marksmanship that had eliminated 6 targets in seconds was being studied as a model for future operations. Dr. Martinez returned with updates on the psychological evaluations of the rescued personnel. Admiral, they're showing remarkable resilience. Captain Chen has been particularly helpful in keeping the group's morale up during their captivity. The aid workers are already asking when they can resume their humanitarian mission. The medical officer's report highlighted the strength of character shown by the survivors. The tactical analysis revealed interesting details about the enemy's capabilities and limitations. The pirates had positioned their sentries according to conventional military doctrine, but had failed to account for long-range precision fire. Their defensive plan assumed any attack would come from close range, a fatal miscalculation when facing an opponent with Hayes's marksmanship skills and equipment. Intelligence intercepts indicated that news of the shark's death was causing significant disruption among criminal networks throughout the region. The pirate leader had been a unifying figure for various criminal groups, and his elimination was creating power struggles that intelligence agencies could exploit. The successful rescue had strategic implications far beyond saving 29 lives. Hayes reviewed the ballistics report on his .50 caliber rifle's performance during the operation. Each of the 6 shots had been precisely on target despite challenging conditions, validating the Admiral's decision to personally handle the Overwatch role. The weapon's effectiveness at extended range had been crucial to the mission's success. The logistics team provided details on the equipment and intelligence materials recovered from the floating fortress. Computers, communications equipment, and weapons were being analyzed to develop a comprehensive picture of the criminal organization's structure and capabilities. This intelligence would support future operations against similar threats. Commander Mitchell presented preliminary recommendations for policy changes based on lessons learned during the operation. Sir, we need to consider pre-positioned assets for rapid response to hostage situations. The time factor was critical in this case, and we might not always have the luxury of detailed planning. Her strategic thinking reflected the importance of being prepared for similar emergencies. The international implications of the successful rescue were becoming apparent as diplomatic messages arrived from various governments. The cargo vessel had been carrying humanitarian supplies destined for multiple countries, making the rescue operation a matter of international concern. Hayes's tactical success had prevented a diplomatic crisis that could have destabilized the entire region. Captain Chen requested a private meeting with Admiral Hayes, approaching the conference room with the steady gait of a man who had spent his life at sea. Admiral, I wanted to thank you personally. Your daughter would be proud of what you accomplished. Today, the ship captain's words carried emotional weight that touched something deep in Hayes's military bearing. The Admiral accepted the gratitude with quiet dignity, remembering the young officer who had served with such distinction before making the ultimate sacrifice. Captain, your daughter's service inspired me to take the risks necessary to save your life and the others. Her memory continues to guide decisions, like the one I made this morning. The connection between past loss and present purpose was clear in Hayes's response. Technical analysis of the enemy. Weapons recovered from the floating fortress revealed sophisticated equipment that shouldn't have been available To criminal organizations, the implications were troubling, suggesting either corrupt military suppliers or successful raids on government armories. This intelligence would require coordination with international law enforcement agencies. The medical team completed their evaluation of all 29 rescued individuals, confirming that the quick action had prevented serious physical harm. Dr. Martinez noted that prolonged captivity often resulted in psychological trauma that could take months or years to overcome, making the rapid rescue even more significant for the survivors' long-term well-being. Hayes prepared his official after-action report, documenting the tactical decisions and execution that had led to mission success. The report would become part of military doctrine, studying how precision marksmanship could be effectively integrated with small unit tactics in hostage rescue scenarios. Future officers would learn from the Admiral's bold decision to personally engage 6 targets in rapid succession. The Barrett rifle was cleaned and secured in the armory, its mission complete, but its service record enhanced by another successful operation. Hayes had carried this weapon through multiple combat zones, and its reliability had proven crucial when accuracy meant the difference between life and death. The .50 caliber rounds that had found their targets with such precision represented years of training and experience, crystallized into perfect execution. As the sun set on the naval base, Admiral Hayes reflected on the events that had transformed a potential massacre into a successful rescue. 6 targets down in seconds had opened the door for everything that followed, proving that sometimes the most important moments in military operations were measured in heartbeats rather than hours. The precision and timing that had saved 29 lives would be remembered and studied for years to come. The Admiral's story, Part 6. 3 months after the dramatic rescue, Admiral Hayes stood before a packed auditorium at the Naval War College, delivering the keynote address on modern maritime security challenges. The rescued hostages had all returned to their lives, with Captain Chen resuming command of humanitarian shipping missions and the aid workers continuing their vital work in refugee camps. The success of the floating fortress operation had become a case study in precision tactics and decisive leadership. The intelligence gathered from the destroyed pirate base had yielded unexpected results. International law enforcement agencies had dismantled 3 separate criminal networks based on information recovered from the floating fortress computers. Hayes's decision to take personal command of the operation had not only saved 29 lives but had disrupted criminal activities across multiple countries. Dr. Martinez had completed her comprehensive study of the rescued hostages' recovery, presenting findings that validated the importance of rapid rescue operations. Admiral, the psychological impact of prolonged captivity can be devastating. By acting decisively when you did, you prevented trauma that could have affected these people for the rest of their lives. Her research was being published in military medical journals worldwide. The Barrett rifle, that had delivered 6 precise shots in those crucial seconds, had been formally recognized by the Navy's Small Arms Program. The weapon's performance during the operation demonstrated the continued relevance of precision marksmanship in modern military operations, even in an era of advanced technology and automated systems. Hayes's personal marksmanship had proven that human skill remained irreplaceable in critical situations. Captain Chen had requested and received permission to attend Hayes's lecture at the War College. The veteran merchant marine captain sat in the front row, his presence serving as a living reminder of the operation's success. During the question and answer session, Chen stood to address the audience directly about his experience as a hostage and his rescue. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen began, his voice carrying the authority of decades at sea, "I've sailed the world's oceans for 40 years. But I've never witnessed anything like Admiral Hayes's performance that night. 6 shots, 6 targets, 6 seconds that changed everything. We went from facing certain death to being rescued by the most professional military operation I've ever seen." The audience of naval officers and military students listened intently as Chen continued his testimony. "The pirates had told us we would be killed if any rescue was attempted. They had heavy weapons, defensive positions, and what they thought was an impregnable floating fortress. Admiral Hayes proved that superior training, precise equipment, and the courage to take calculated risks can overcome any advantage criminals might think they possess." Hayes acknowledged Chen's comments with quiet dignity, then addressed the broader implications of the operation. The success of this mission wasn't due to any individual performance, but to the integration of intelligence, planning, equipment, and execution. The .50 caliber rifle was merely the tool that enabled the tactical plan to succeed. Without the assault team's professionalism and the support staff's preparation, those 6 shots would have meant nothing. Commander Mitchell, now promoted to captain, following her exemplary performance during the operation, provided additional context for the students. The Admiral's willingness to personally handle the most dangerous aspect of the mission created a confidence throughout the team that enabled everyone to perform at their peak. Leadership isn't just about making decisions. It's about sharing the risks that come with those decisions. The tactical analysis of the operation had been incorporated into Navy doctrine, with specific emphasis on the integration of precision marksmanship with small unit operations. The floating fortress rescue demonstrated how traditional military skills could be adapted to address modern security challenges that didn't fit conventional warfare. Paradigm's intelligence officer Rodriguez presented the long-term strategic impact of eliminating the shark and his criminal organization. The disruption of this pirate network created a power vacuum that we were able to exploit through coordinated international operations. The Admiral's tactical success enabled strategic victories that are still yielding results months later. Hayes reviewed the personal impact of the operation on his own career and perspective. The successful rescue had validated his belief that experience and training could overcome technological advantages when applied with tactical intelligence. More importantly, it had provided closure for the emotional burden he had carried since delivering news of Captain Chen's daughter's death years earlier. The lessons learned from the floating fortress operation were being taught at military schools worldwide. The precision marksmanship techniques, the integration of intelligence and tactics, and the importance of decisive leadership under pressure had become standard subjects in advanced military education programs. Chief Thompson, now assigned to train other special operations units, frequently used the rescue operation as an example of perfect mission execution. The Admiral's 6 shots created the conditions for everything that followed. Without that initial success, we would have faced a completely different tactical situation, probably with massive casualties on both sides. The Barrett rifle manufacturer had requested detailed information about the weapon's performance during the operation, using Hayes's experience to improve their products for future military users. The .50 caliber rifle had performed flawlessly under challenging conditions, validating its design and manufacturing quality in the most demanding real-world test. Possible international maritime organizations had implemented new security protocols based on intelligence gathered from the destroyed pirate base. The comprehensive understanding of criminal tactics and capabilities gained from the operation was helping protect shipping lanes and civilian vessels throughout the region. Hayes concluded his lecture by addressing the fundamental principle that had guided his decision to personally engage the 6 targets. Military leadership requires the willingness to accept personal risk when the lives of others depend on your actions. The .50 caliber rifle gave me the capability to eliminate those threats. But the decision to take those shots came from the understanding that 29 innocent people would die if I failed. The standing ovation that followed Hayes's presentation reflected the impact his story had on the audience of current and future military leaders. The Admiral's demonstration of courage, skill, and decisive action had provided a template for leadership under the most challenging circumstances imaginable. As the audience filed out of the auditorium, Captain Chen approached Hayes with a final observation. "Admiral, my daughter would indeed be proud of what you accomplished. But more than that, she would understand that her sacrifice contributed to saving 29 lives that night. Your success honored her memory in the most meaningful way possible." Hayes accepted the comment with the quiet dignity that had characterized his entire military career. The floating fortress operation had demonstrated that precision, courage, and tactical intelligence could overcome any challenge when properly applied. 6 targets eliminated in seconds had proven that individual excellence could create strategic success when combined with team professionalism and careful planning. The Admiral's story would be remembered and retold for generations of military officers, serving as an example of how traditional military virtues remained relevant in modern warfare. The Barrett rifle that had delivered such precise fire was now displayed in the Naval War College Museum, its brass nameplate reading simply, Admiral Hayes, 6 targets, 6 seconds, 29 lives saved. The legacy of that night would continue to influence military doctrine, training programs, and leadership development for years to come. Hayes had proven that when innocent lives hung in the balance, there was no substitute for superior training, precise equipment, and the courage to accept personal risk for the greater good. The Admiral took the 50 cal, and 29 people went home to their families because of what happened in those crucial seconds when precision marksmanship met moral courage.